Welcome back to the Revealed Report, where our world is getting quite interesting. And I will say, it's never dull. There's plenty enough information to provide you, and plenty enough going on to in the news world to give you content. So, for better or worse, but over the last couple of days, we have seen some pretty radically crazy things for our nation. I know that's pretty shocking to say because it seems like we're living in a time frame that everything's pretty shocking right now. And I will say, I wish we could go back to a time in America where the news cycle was a little more dull and boring. However, while some people will blame Donald Trump for that, actually, the only reason that's the case is because the digressive movement had pretty much infiltrated everything without really anybody pushing back or trying to win for the American people. And so Trump was the disruptor. He was the hand grenade on all of the deep state and all of the establishment. And so you can't have that without having a battlefield. And I know a lot of people are probably tired of the battlefield, but the truth of the matter is we will always be in the battlefield. We will always be in a spiritual, ideological, and political war as long as the United States of America is continuing on. And if that's not the case, then the enemy has won, and we have resorted to the enemy, and we have coughed over all of our freedoms, all of our inalienable rights that God has endowed to us. So we can never be weary in the fight. We must understand that the only way we're going to win, the only way we're going to keep a stabilized country is we must be victorious, and that only comes by fighting. The only reason why America is in this state of ongoing news cycle is because the disruptor finally pushed back on those that were taking advantage of the American people. And if it was not for a fighter, we would have just kept going down the journey of the digression in America. And so it's very important that we do not give up in the fight. We do not get weary just because there's schisms on the MAGA side, just because there's a lot of chaos and craziness. And we also have to remember that President Donald Trump sometimes says things that are a little more extreme than what many of us would say it, or many of us would even like for him to say it. This is no different. Anybody remember 2016 when everybody would lose their minds because what he would put out on Twitter, now X, and now is Truth Social. But every time he would put something out there, everybody would lose their minds. And it was always more reaction than there was really there from President Trump. So we need to stop all that nonsense. Now, with that said, it doesn't mean we don't have problems. We do have some issues. And I want to start off with saying I never lose hope. And there's a couple reasons why I never lose hope. Number one, I know who's in control. It's not the president. It's not Congress. It's not a world leader. I know who's in control. His name's Jesus. And so we have full faith that Jesus is sitting on the throne. He's in charge. He's in control. So everything is going to work out. That doesn't mean everything's always going to be easy. Doesn't mean we can just take ease and act like everything's going to just be peaceful and okay without some kind of pushing back the evil. I also never lose faith in America because we have been through many dark and dangerous times. And the beauty of the American system is a lot of times it will correct course. Sometimes it will auto correct. So we have been in some very dangerous and contentious times in our nation, even more so than now. However, with that being said, I will say to you that I believe that we are living in a very dangerous time. We are entering a dangerous time in our nation. How long is it going to take before it gets really bad? I don't know. But we can't stay down this course without it getting really bad. We are on a dangerous path in our nation. The undercurrent is so strong. The divide is so strong between the right and the left. And the truth of the matter is, I believe we're crossing the Rubicon and there's no way of coming back because there are some things that we cannot agree on. I cannot agree on abortion. I can't agree on the sexualization of our children and all of these things. I can't agree to that. There's no middle grounds and there's no compromise on these things. One of us have to win. and we want to win. That's why we can't lay down and give up the fight. And that's why we need to be thankful we have a president that won't just lay down and give up the fight. We can disagree with some things that he may say or some policies that he may have. But overall, we must win against the radical left because we cannot allow all of that insanity to take over our nation once again. With that being said, though, I do believe that the undercurrent is so dangerous that if it begins to rise up and pull our nation, it can get really bad real quick. Remember, all it took for World War I to start off was one bullet in Franz Ferdinand's head. But it didn't start with that bullet. There was a lot of undercurrent, and that bullet pulled the world into that undercurrent. And that's when it became very, very dangerous. I believe there's some dangerous things that is taking place. And part of that is what the Democrat senators just did. And I will play the clip. I'll give you Trump's reaction, then I'll give you my commentary. Some of you have probably seen this in other news cycle, but I want to give it to you from myself. And this is what some sitting members of Congress did just recently.
I'm Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris DeLuzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow.
I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
And the intelligence community.
Who take risks each day
To keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
like us. You all swore an oath.
To protect and defend this Constitution.
And right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad.
But from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law.
Or our Constitution.
We know this is hard.
And that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
The Army.
Our Navy.
The Air Force.
Your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
The American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws.
Our Constitution.
And who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
don't give up.
Don't give up.
So here you go. They're telling active members of the U.S. military and the CIA to go in complete defiance of the commander in chief. Now they're saying that you do not have to engage in illegal orders. Duh. We all know that. Like, for example, if they were told to just go down to the city street and just mow down a bunch of innocent people, the U.S. military shouldn't do that. They should abide by the U.S. Constitution. We know that. That's true. The problem is they're playing on the language. This is what the radical left does. They use the language very meticulously so that they can really insinuate what they want without you being able to pin them down. This is the game of today, is to try to choose your words wisely so you can really say what you mean. People are catching it, but yet you cannot be pinned down for actually saying it. So they're saying you don't have to listen to illegal orders. But the problem is they won't tell you what those illegal orders are because Trump has not declared or given the military any illegal orders, not one. As a matter of fact, some of them were asked this question. They couldn't provide that. They were just given a generalized statement. The truth of the matter is they weren't trying to send the message to defy illegal orders. They were trying to paint the picture that the president of the United States, the commander in chief, is continuously giving the military illegal orders. And they're trying to say that he's kind of like a Nazi, kind of like a fascist, kind of like Hitler. And he's just trying to do illegal activity, flex his muscles, and he's trying to be a tyrannical dictator. And therefore you should defy him. And what they're actually doing is an act of sedition. Now, President Trump, I think, actually went way too far in his language, even though we know he didn't really mean it. And the left loses their mind. Oh, President Trump is calling for the execution of his political opposition. He's calling for them to be tried and put to death. That's not what Trump is actually doing. Yes, did he put it out there like that? Yes. But anybody remember 2016, where Trump would say a lot of things that we thought, wow, did he actually say that? And he never meant it to that extreme. Give you one example. He said he would cut funding off in New York City if Governor Mamdani became, if the mayor, Mamdani became the mayor of New York City, that he would cut off most of federal funding. But now you can see that Mamdani was there at the White House, and Trump and Mamdani was meeting and talking and trying to work things out. Yes, he says things a little more extreme than we probably would like even on our side, but we know he doesn't mean it to the extremity that it comes off on social media. Also, he did say this, though, and I think there is a level of truth here, and I'm going to give you my commentary. He put this out on his Truth Social. This is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors. Lock them up, President DJT, Donald J. Trump. Now, it is dangerous. I believe it's absolutely dangerous for sitting congressional members to be telling the United States military and CIA to go in defiance of the commander in chief and actually do it outside of orders and do it outside of any form of rank. This is a seditious act. Now, should it be punishable by death? No, none of us believe that. There's no court that would actually do that, especially in the United States of America today. So no, that's not what President Trump is really trying to call for. He says things more extreme. I think he was very justifiably upset. And so would I be if I had congressional members actually telling them to act in seditious ways. Now, they're trying to pick their words wisely to try to say, we're just saying that they shouldn't engage in illegal activity. But here's the sad and pathetic thing about the radical left. They want to act like they care about the military. They don't care one bit about the military. They had no problem with military men and women not getting a paycheck because of the government shutdown. And as a matter of fact, they wanted to use that as leverage against Donald J. Trump. They don't really care about the well-being of the military. They don't really care about the ethics of the military. As a matter of fact, the radical left doesn't care about ethics at all. What this is Trump derangement syndrome. They're just doing everything they can to try to paint the narrative that President Trump is always given the military and the CIA illegal orders to enact against the American people. And you have to understand that they're trying to say that Trump is breaking the Constitution, which he has never defied the Supreme Court on any of their rulings. But President Trump was dealing with the out of control, radical violence and crime activity in Portland and in Chicago. And you can see that the mayor and the governors, they don't care about the people in the streets. They would rather try to defend the illegals coming into our country, even illegal criminals, call them the Maryland man. And they would rather stand in defense of them than our federal government trying to crack down on the crime of coming into our country illegally. And then on top of that, they wanted to try to give illegals free health care on the backs of hardworking Americans, taxpayers. Their loyalty is to non-citizens over to citizens of the United States of America. In addition to that, they really have a problem with Trump and what he's doing with Venezuela, his calling out of the Venezuelan government and calling it a narco state and blowing up these ships that are trying to smuggle drugs into our country. And the reason why they're coming in on ships into our country is because he's closed up the border, because now we have a negative net migration, meaning more people are leaving than coming in. So he's cracked down on the illegal immigration. He's cracked down on the border. And now they're trying to smuggle in through ships. And so they know that this is drugs that is going to kill Americans, that's going to help lead in gang activity and that. And so they blew up the ship, and the radical left loses their mind and is trying to say, no, he's calling you to engage in illegal activities, when they would have no problem. Remember when Obama was using the idea of drone strikes even on American citizens, and that is their savior? And so they don't care about any of that. This is just painting a narrative. That's all the radical left does. They can't just be honest with us. Why is it that they're trying to defend Venezuelan drug gangs and drug dealers over the United States of American citizens. Why are they more concerned with illegals getting free health care than the military getting paychecks? And now they're going to come out and act like they're for the military and they're standing in your defense because they really care about you. The radical left continually gaslight and lie all the time. They were trying to say, well, we're just giving a generalized statement. No, that's not what they were trying to do. They're trying to paint the picture that he's just a Hitler. He's just taking his brown shirt military and all of his Department of Defense and the CIA, and he's rounding up his Gestapo, and he's going after people and rounding them up. That's what the narrative that they're trying to paint. And it is seditious. Now, I don't believe that it should be punishable by death. I don't. Now, there's probably some that believe maybe it should be, but I don't. However, I do believe there needs to be consequences. I do agree with President Trump on that. I think it's very dangerous when our military is being told to defy the commander in chief. And what do you think Putin and what do you think China thinks when they hear that? What do you think they're doing? They're watching. They're seeing if this is going to be a weakened American, a weakened military. Now, I don't think it's going to go that far. However, this is not okay. And the problem is they know they can get away with it. That's why they say those things. That's why they do those things, because they know they're going to get away with it. That's why Jasmine Crockett is down on the floor of the House speaking about how the Republicans were getting money from Jeffrey Epstein, but she says not the Jeffrey Epstein. I never claimed that. A Jeffrey Epstein. But what she was doing was insinuating that they had some kind of activity with this sex freak running sex rings. The only reason she's able to get away with saying that is because they're not held to any liability or any account on the congressional floor. On the House floor, they can say whatever they want and there's no repercussions. However, if I come on air and say some of the things they say against them, we could be sued for defamation of character, libels, and whatever. But we allow the U.S. Congress, House of Representatives, we allow our leaders to really say things that we can't say. And I don't think it's breaching free speech to hold them accountability for saying things that is seditious, that is telling people to be traitors to the commander in chief when he's not giving out one illegal order. And so I think there needs to be a higher level of accountability. However, the radical left has really pinned Donald Trump in a corner. See, they kept going after him, the political opposition. They wanted to wreck and ruin his life. They wanted to wreck and ruin his kids' life. They would love nothing more than to impeach him, to put him behind bars for the rest of his life. And if that wasn't enough, they would have loved nothing more than to try to put a bullet in his head. And they'll say, well, it wasn't the radical left trying to put a bullet in his head. Hey, they were all sad that it didn't work. Anybody read their Twitter accounts? Anybody read their X accounts? Anybody read their social media accounts where they were acting as if they were sad at the fact that President Trump was not assassinated? How many of them celebrated or made a light matter out of the Charlie Kirk assassination? They are a party of violence. And as you can see, they're also a rebellious party. They're a party of traitors to the United States of America. Now, I don't believe that means we should go and hang them, but I do believe they need to be held at some form of accountability. However, the radical left tried to wreck and ruin President Trump's life in every kangaroo court, and now they're trying to paint the picture that he's going to go after them with revenge and that he's going to try to muscle up the federal government to go after his political opposition. So they paint the picture doing that so that President Trump and the GOP does not hold them accountable, that our Supreme Court and our court judges does not hold them accountable, so that we don't look guilty of the very things they're accusing the right of. However, I believe we got to trash all of that, because if we allow them to keep doing this and there's no accountability, the radical left will keep playing the game, and they don't play by the rules. they will bend the rules for their side and then try to use the rules against us. And I've been saying it for a long time that we can't lose in dignity and honor playing by their rules anymore. We have to cast the rules aside. We are in a political, spiritual, and ideological war, and they should have some accountability for these acts of sedition. And I don't know exactly what all that is, but I do believe at the minimum level, it's censorship. They should be censured. That's the lowest level of punishment that should happen. That should take place, and that should take place right now. And the Democrats, any of the old school type of Democrats, should be the first ones on the front line coming out and saying it, so that they don't make you all look like you're just a bunch of traitors, that you really don't believe in the commander-in-chief's orders when they're legal, because you can say that you can defy illegal orders. There's not been one illegal order to defy. There's not been one order that Trump has given that has been illegal by the U.S. Constitution or any of the laws, and he has never defied the Supreme Court. So why don't you just tell us why? Why don't the radical left just quit lying to the American people? Why don't they tell us why they would rather support and defend illegal migration without assimilation over the U.S. American citizens? Why? Why would they rather defend narco drug dealers than U.S. citizens? Why? Why would they rather defend lawlessness in the streets than the crackdown of crime? Why? And they won't answer that question because they can't. Because they can't be honest with the American people, because they'll show their true colors. And Marxists don't do that. The true fascists never do that. They hide their intent in obscurity. One of the reasons you can tell that Donald Trump is not just one of these dictators that they claim him to be is because he's very honest with you. He doesn't hide all his intent. The radical left hides it all. They manipulate, they deceive, they're crafty and cunning. They're subtle. They're like the serpent. They can't just tell you what they believe. You know why? Because most American people don't want the radicalism. And the people on the left, if they really know what the end result of that is, and if they really know what all that means, they won't buy into it either. But they know they have to uproot the system. And the only way they do that is they have to turn people into useful idiots. Dumb everything down, play to the low IQ people, rally up their emotions, and turn them against the power of the day. Make them into revolutionaries that's standing for some noble cause, even though they really don't know what that noble cause is. And also try to weaken the other side, wear them out till they're tired with all the news cycle, all of the craziness, all the chaos, until finally they just surrender and quit fighting back. But I have news for the radical left. As long as we have breath, some of us are never going to quit fighting back, because we love our nation. We love the God that we serve. We love Jesus. We love the Constitution. We love the Declaration of Independence. We love the founding principles of America. And we want to ensure that our children knows what it's like to grow up in the land of the free and the home of the brave. To be able to take their kids on Sunday morning to a church without having to hide from the authorities. That we have freedom of speech and freedom of the press. That we're not under the boot of a tyrannical dictatorship called the deep state. And I've been telling you for a long time that just because President Trump won the election, and even though he was promising the golden age and all of that, and we felt like it was a reprieve, that was not the end of the fight. That was just the beginning. Because the enemy was never going to go away. They were just going to try to become more crafty or more brazen, one extreme or the other, and they were going to work in many ways. And it's still the color revolution. You have the radical side of them, and then you have what seems to be the more logical side of them, and they try to use both sides so that when you're pushed away from the radicals, you buy into the more logical side, and then they try to infiltrate the system. And you find that the radical left, humanists, Marxists, and the Islamists are the exact same. And this is how they work. This is how they're trying to uproot the United States of America. They want assimilation, or they want, migration without assimilation. Because they can then try to use those people to turn them on everything that's conservative, everything that resembles the Constitution, while claiming that they're trying to defend the Constitution. And they never tell you directly why they're defending illegal and drug cartels over the United States of American citizens. They can never just be honest with you. And we're supposed to believe that this is all going to hurt Trump. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think it is. I do believe there needs to be accountability, though. Now, sadly, for the radical left, is they think that Trump's use of the military, especially with his foreign policy, is, the American people are going to turn against him on this. Now, it is true that most presidents in the United States, when they're on their second term and they're more towards the lame duck period, that they begin to ramp up their foreign policy, and they kind of want to be known by that. Reagan did it, many presidents have done it, Clinton, same way. However, many Americans like Trump's foreign policy. Even Harry Enton on CNN had this to say concerning Trump's foreign policy.
This is one of the areas in which Donald Trump is performing significantly better than he was in term one. One of his best issues relative to term one. What are we talking about? Approval of Trump on foreign policy at this point in term one. Look, Donald Trump was just at a 35% approval rating, up like a rocket. We're talking about 43% now. That's an 8-point rise. On the net approval rating, we're talking about a double-digit rise. The American people like much more of what they're seeing from Donald Trump in foreign policy in term two than they did in term number one.
So it's not hurting Trump at all whatsoever. Many Americans like his foreign policy. They're glad that he's cracked down on the border. They're glad that he's taking out narco-terrorists and narco-drug cartels, that he's showing a strong America, because we want peace through strength. We believe that a strong America is a deterrent against all of our foreign enemies. And so most of the United States of American general public want a strong America and a strong leader. We don't want a coward in office. We don't want somebody that can't intimidate our geopolitical threats. And so most people are happy with Trump's foreign policy, which, by the way, goes in defiance of what we're hearing by some on the right, that everybody's so concerned about Israel, and the war between Israel and Hamas. And that's going to hurt Trump. And everybody's going to turn their back on Trump because of Israel, even though the majority of people are supporting Trump's foreign policy. You know why? Because if you live on social media, you wouldn't believe this, but most of the United States of America, most of the Christians of the United States of America still support Israel. It doesn't seem that way because they're not the loudest voices in the media. But by large, the percentages still show that most Americans, especially Christians, support Israel. Now, what you will find is the younger generation is being polluted with all the ideologies by both the radical left and the far alt-right, the American isolationist, American only people, that is corrupting and polluting the minds of the young people. But most people are not being deterred because Trump took out the Iranian nuclear facility. Most people are not buying into the lies of the radical left, neither the far alt-right. Most people support Israel still, and they're thankful that we're not letting Iran get closer to a nuclear weapon. Because we don't want radical jihadism, because most of us that's been living for a while still remembers the attack of 9/11. And we don't want to return to that again. That's why we're also glad that the border's been closed and he's cracking down on illegal immigration, because we do not want terrorists to have an opportunity to come into our country and to attack American citizens. And so that's why many people are supporting the president's foreign policy. Now, Israel, we're told, is always the problem. Israel. Israel's trying to control our government. AIPAC is controlling our politicians. AIPAC is destroying the United States of America. And we need to get rid of AIPAC. We need to get rid of Israel. And you can't use this language over and over again without turning people against Jews. It's no different than what Hitler was really doing before it got real bad. You got to get people to look at a certain class of people different. It's a very dangerous, the rhetoric that is coming out. And yes, language does matter. And so what you find though is it's not Israel that's a threat to the United States. It's more Islamists that are a threat to the United States. It wasn't Jews that took out the Twin Tower. It was Islamists. It was jihadists that took out the Twin Towers. Look at Dearborn, Michigan right now. That's starting to look more like Mecca than the United States of America. And they're not assimilating to the principles of the United States. They're trying to push Sharia law in all the world. And they use the same principles as the radical left, the Marxists. Lie to people, deceive people, use radicals to get them to buy into the peaceful movement so that they can pollute the system, so that they can uproot the system. And we hear about AIPAC. What about CARE? What about that Islamist lobbyist group? What about the Muslim Brotherhood that's trying to infiltrate America and America's education system? We can even see that Governor Abbott had to put a stop to all of this. According to the office of the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, Governor Abbott designates Muslim Brotherhood, CARE, as foreign terrorist organizations. Governor Greg Abbott today, this was on November 18, 2025, designated the Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, as foreign terrorist organizations and transnational criminal organizations. This designation authorizes heightened enforcement against both organizations and their affiliates and prohibits them from purchasing or acquiring land in Texas. The Muslim Brotherhood and CARE have long made their goals clear: to forcibly impose Sharia law and establish Islam's mastership of the world, said Governor Abbott. The actions taken by the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE to support terrorism across the globe and to subvert our laws through violence, intimidation, and harassment are unacceptable. Today, I designate the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE as foreign terrorist organizations and transnational criminal organizations. These radical extremists are not welcome in our state and are now prohibited from acquiring any real property interest in Texas, end quote. God bless Governor Abbott. But let me tell you that Mom Donnie, when he won the mayor of New York City, he was receiving his funds from CARE. That's who was supporting him. And we're supposed to be concerned about Israel lobbyists when we have Islamists that are trying to buy off politicians, trying to infiltrate our system, trying to infiltrate court systems, trying to infiltrate the education system. May I tell you that we all can go to Israel safely. We can take a tour of the Holy Land and treat it very well, but I'm not so secure crossing over and going into jihadist area. And you have Tucker Carlson that's over there on his podcast. I understand what he's saying, part of what he's saying. He's saying we have so many problems here. Why are we worried about everything else? We can worry about both. It's not a zero-sum game. We need to worry about foreign and domestic. We need to make sure that we're safe from foreign and domestic threats. We need to take care of both fights. And that's why we don't just let terrorists take over the rest of the world and act like it's never going to come to our doorstep. We do not let foreign terrorists begin to get nuclear weapons and act like they're never going to try to turn it on us when they're always saying death to America, when they call us the great Satan and they believe in the eradication of the West for the purpose of pushing Sharia law in all the world. We can fight on both fronts. It's not a zero-sum game. But he downplays Sharia law in the midst of that. And he begins to take some of the good places, like Dubai, where's Abu Dhabi, and downplay Sharia law like it's not really a concern. When we have seen what they do, we have seen the beheadings. What about Nigeria, Tucker? Now he finally says something about it. What about the Christian persecution in Nigeria by Islamic jihadists that are slaughtering massive amounts of Nigerians? They're burning them alive inside of their churches. And by the way, for the American-only people and the American isolationists, should we not try to help them as they're being slaughtered to death over Nigeria when we have the capability to influence them and put it to a stop? So we just abandon the rest of them? And we call that the Christian thing to do? I don't think so. I don't think it's one or the other. I think we can have both. I think we can balance both of those. And so the downplaying of Sharia law, the downplaying of Islamic terrorist threat, the downplaying of Hamas, the downplaying of the fact that over 60% of the Palestinian people voted for Hamas, the fact that we downplay the reality that they build tunnels under their hospitals and their schools using the most vulnerable as shields for their war efforts, so they can play their PR game, that they'll have their own people slaughtered so they can play the propaganda game and get ignorant American people to feel sorry for the innocent Hamas. And of course, they're not going to say it that way, but that's really what it is. That's really how it operates. That's really how it takes place. I'm not concerned about Israel as I'm concerned about the United States of America cities becoming more like Dearborn, Michigan. When we got Ilhan Omar's in office that can't even say that it was Islamists that flew those planes in the Twin Towers, some people did something that day. And we're supposed to be worried about Jews loving their homeland? Where are they talking about the Islamists? Tucker Carlson spent all that time talking about Israel. Jihadi Candy Owens spends all that time talking about Israel, and they don't talk about Mamdani, which, by the way, Mamdani must not be able to afford all of the promises he gave, so he has to come to the White House to talk to Donald Trump. Now, for the right that's wondering, why is Donald Trump talking to Mamdani? He's going to influence Mamdani. He's going to try to win Mamdani over and influence him and begin to get Mamdani to back away from all his radical, crazy ideas, like, defunding the police. Because Mamdani now realizes he don't have the money to be able to fund all the stuff that he's been promising. So he's going to need federal aid. And the only way Donald Trump is going to give it is they're going to have to negotiate. So Donald Trump's going to bring him to the table and begin to influence him. We don't need to question Trump on this. I thought it was absolutely hilarious when they began to question Mamdani, though, give you light-hearted humor. When they began to question Mamdani and they began to say, do you believe that Trump's a fascist? And he's trying to explain himself, and Trump smiles and taps him and says, it's okay. You can call me a fascist. It's easier than trying to explain it. Trump is just absolutely hilarious. He really is. And so I don't think that his foreign policy is what's going to take him down. Neither do I believe they have dirt on him in the Epstein files. However, I will say I do believe that the Epstein files has personally hurt him. Now, Donald Trump is not a man that shows emotion. Here I am smacking my microphone. Donald Trump is not a man that's going to show high emotions. He's a strong leader. He doesn't show all of that. However, I do believe it personally hurt him because he is being accused of the most wicked, evil acts. And then some that's supposed to be on his side, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, is really putting a knife in him as well. Some people that's supposed to be the supporters of him that he believes would trust in him is now breaking that trust. And I do believe that personally hurts him. And I believe that's why he was really upset. I do believe that they fumbled it. I do believe Pam Bondi it was a debacle. It was terrible how they went about it. And I do believe that hurts him a bit. Now, I don't think there's dirt to take him down. I do believe it's going to be endless amounts of distractions. I do have a concern with the releasing of the Epstein files. Now, look, I want full transparency, and I want victimizers to be taken down. I want them to pay the price for these hideous acts. However, I don't believe we're ever going to get the fullness of the story. And why I think it's actually probably more dangerous to release the files is because any name that's associated is now going to be dragged through the mud and the dirt. Even though there might not be solidifying evidence to show that there's any guilt, I believe a lot of people are going to be brought into a kangaroo court of being called sex offenders, pedophiles, rapists, whatever. And a lot of them are not going to be wrong. Some are going to possibly be tied to it, but there's going to be a lot of people that's probably got their name involved in it that had nothing to do with him, because he was a very, very powerful man that connected with a lot of people. And so therefore, I think there's a lot of names that's going to be tied to Epstein that's going to get dragged through the mud. And my concern is we are not living in a nation anymore that truly believes, as it should be, that people are innocent until proven guilty beyond a shadow of doubt. I believe now people are guilty for just one-line statements taken out of context, that you can make anybody guilty on social media anymore. Just go and watch Jihadi Candy Owens' podcast. Well, she's got 5 million followers, a lot of ladies today, that's just following that because the ladies, for some reason today, are really in crime scene investigative type of stuff. It's one of the top podcasting things. And so now they're following Jihadi Candy Owens, that's just making everybody guilty on the basis of conspiracies, on the basis of just little pieces of information that's taken out of context with no solidifying evidence to prove guilt beyond a shadow of a doubt. And yet people will begin to make them all guilty because of one-line statements done by Candace Owens. And I believe that's the dangerous place we're in today. And America must return to a place that people are innocent until proven guilty beyond a reason of shadow of doubt. Because I believe that now it's very dangerous and a lot of lives are going to be ruined who may not even be guilty. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't want there to be transparency. That doesn't mean I don't want there to be accountability. But the truth of the matter is, I think we're far past that ability. I think there was probably cover up before President Trump was ever in office. And now there's going to be some kind of legal redactions. There's no way there wouldn't be, because I'm sure there's federal laws that would force some of that. However, Chucky Schumer is already out there painting the picture that if there's 1 ounce of tweaking or redaction, then that automatically makes Trump guilty. And now in the climate age that we're in, everybody can just use it as a smear campaign on Trump, even though they won't have solidifying evidence that take him down. Now, like I said, humbly on the Revealed Report, if we're ever wrong, we will confess that. But I believe it's going to be a major distraction and a smear campaign. And honestly, the Democrat people should agree with me, because it's your Democrats, it's your libs that right now is being dragged through that. Most of them have bad connections with Epstein. Plaskett. So you can find Jeffrey Epstein or Hakeem Jeffries. It seems to be more tied to the Democrats than the right. So there's some backfiring. Now look, now everybody gets dragged through the mud. And it's just political optics. The radical left doesn't care about the victims. It's political optics. It's just a political game. They want to play noble, but they're not noble. They have no problem using the pain of people as leverage against their political opposition. And so that's why I have no respect for the radical left politicians. And I believe anybody who follows them is out of their mind. Although I pray for you, because we love people and we want everybody to be reached. But I believe it's a poison in America today. So I want full transparency as well. But I don't like the climate and the atmosphere of America today, because people are just found guilty without any proof anymore. In some way, we got to come back from the sensationalism to being grounded and rooted in American principle, and especially principles of God's word. And I believe the reason why we're migrating into this easily accusing people is because we're migrating from Christianity into more of a humanistic society. And Satan is the accuser of the brethren, accusing them before our God both day and night. Now accusations are hurled when we migrate away from Christianity, because the only thing that is merciful truly is God. And when we emulate Jesus, we begin to become merciful. When we get away from that, we are merciless. That's why communist dictators that wanted to run God out had no mercy. That's why Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin can say, we got to break some eggs. Sometimes you got to make wood fly, as if human beings are just inanimate objects, just food on a table. That's what happens when America migrates away from God. And so what America needs is a restoration of the soul, repentance, coming back to in God we trust. Because as long as we go down this path, it's going to keep getting worse and worse. What's going to come in the soon coming days, it's just chaos and confusion for which God's not the author of. And a lot of distractions. So I am praying for our president. I am praying for the United States of America. I am praying that the American people can see past all of the corruption, all of the seditious nature of the radical left against the commander in chief. And I pray that the American people will wake up to the fact that the radical left does not truly care about you. They want to use you as leverage against the United States of America, President of the United States, and the commander in chief. Their Trump derangement syndrome makes them want to use you as a weapon and leverage against the president. You're just a pawn in their hands. That's all. And when you no longer have value, they're willing to trample on your rights and cast you to the side. That's why we can't let the radical left win the midterms, and especially not the White House in 2028. America, I love you. The church will be standing tomorrow. For Jesus said, upon this rock, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. But if the republic has not totally been burned down by Monday, I'll see you Monday evening for the Revealed Report. God bless you, America. I love you. Have a great night.